I love you. Those words were followed by one shot, and Miss Young died right there on her bedroom floor from a shot in the back.
She was on the floor, and her baby girl was holding her mom's hand. Through the love and grace of God,
You are full of it.
I am strengthened day by day.
A man shot and killed a Florida radio personality who was the mother of his 2 children and was pregnant with their 3rd child. A neighbor said she could hear Tasheka Young begging him not to kill her before he shot her in the back and left their young children in the room with their mother's body. And when he got caught, he tried to escape from the interrogation room through the ceiling. We're continuing our series of recaps of some of the biggest trials in the country with Florida versus Bursey Armstrong Jr. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. In July of 2022, Tasheka Young was a 34-year-old mom of 2 with a baby on the way. In the Jacksonville, Florida community, she was known as Tasheka, thanks to her prior DJ work for the local Power 106.1 True Hip Hop station. She'd been in a tumultuous on-again, off-again relationship with the father of her children, 35-year-old Bursey Jerome Armstrong Jr. He's actually living in another state for work, and when he did come to visit Tasheka and the kids, prosecutors say he preferred to stay at his parents' home, 45 minutes away. Now, police reports from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office show a documented history of domestic abuse, including a report about Armstrong allegedly beating and strangling Tasheka. In May of 2021, a year before the killing, Armstrong called police saying that Tasheka had broken into his home and threatened him with a knife because he'd had her, quote, removed from his home by police. At the time, Tasheka and Armstrong were living together, and officers discovered that Tasheka was also legally allowed to live there, but she'd allegedly left that night to get away from him in fear for her life and the lives of her young children. Now, when the responding officer called Tasheka with Armstrong standing nearby, Tasheka told him she didn't want to talk anywhere near Armstrong because he could listen, so they met up in person instead. Tasheka reportedly told the officer that about a month before, Armstrong jumped her while she was asleep and choked her, all while their young son watched. She had photos of marks and scratches on her neck from when it happened, according to the report. No charges were filed against Armstrong or Tasheka for what happened here, but we checked out Armstrong's criminal history using TruthFinder. It's a powerful background checker. We put in his name, quickly found out who we were looking for under his criminal history. We were able to confirm that he's gone to court for multiple traffic violations in Duval County, Florida over the years, including for a DUI, which he pleaded no contest to in 2018. You can also see the second-degree murder charges that he ended up facing. And Law&Crime, we partner with TruthFinder. We use it to get details on the people involved in our stories. But even if you don't work in true crime, it can be an excellent resource to give you some peace of mind because it's one of the largest public record search services in the United States. And with a paid subscription service, you can get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone. So right now, if you're interested, you can get 50% off of your first month of confidential background reports. Just go to truthfinder.com/LC Sidebar. So 2 weeks before Tasheka was killed, she had texted her mom that Armstrong had held his Glock handgun to her head. This couple's relationship came to a devastating end on July 23rd, 2022. Police get a call, a 911 phone call, from the woman who lived in the apartment below Tasheka's. And she said she had gotten up during the night to feed her baby, and she could hear someone burst into the apartment above her. She told dispatchers she could hear Tasheka begging for her life, her children crying, and she also said she heard what sounded like gunshots. Now, here's the thing. When police officers responded, they didn't hear anything going on inside Tasheka's apartment, and the downstairs neighbor didn't answer the door to provide any more information, so they said they didn't have probable cause to break in, and they left. Now, the next day, Tasheka's mom says that she gets this text from Armstrong asking if she had talked to Tasheka, and Olivia Young thought that was pretty odd because she had Armstrong's number, but they never really spoke. So when Olivia goes to her daughter's apartment, what she finds is absolutely horrific. Her grandchildren, 1-year-old Bailey, 3-year-old Bursey III, were in their mother's bedroom where Tasheka was laying dead on the floor, surrounded by blood, and Olivia testified that little Bailey was even holding her mom's hand. The children had been alone since Tasheka died more than 12 hours. The blankets the toddlers had used to cover her would later be shown in court. An investigation determined that Tasheka was shot twice, killing her and her unborn child. And police say Bursey Armstrong Jr. involved himself in the investigation almost immediately, coming over to Tasheka's apartment to find out what was going on. Jacksonville Sheriff's deputies took him in for questioning. Armstrong said he hadn't been to the apartment in over a week, told police they could check his cell phone. Deputies also served a search warrant at Armstrong's parents' home and found bloody clothes and a gun buried under the back porch steps. Armstrong, in the end, was charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder, 1 count for Tasheka, 1 count for the baby. He went to trial in July of 2024, so 2 years after the murders. So let's get into it. During opening statements, the prosecutor told the jury that Tasheka's downstairs neighbor heard those heartbreaking words as she stood below what was the soon-to-be murder scene.
I love you. Those words were followed by 1 shot, and Miss Young died right there on her bedroom floor from a shot in the back. The evidence is going to show you that the only person that had the motive, had the opportunity, and had the consciousness of guilt to have done this crime and then tried to hide it is the man seated before you right now, Mr. Armstrong. He's the person that had the relationship with Miss Young, and he's the person that had the reasons. The shots were heard before 1:30 in the morning, and now it's 5:15 p.m. And we know that children were in that apartment when Miss Young was shot because the downstairs neighbor could hear them crying. So the police arrive, they start their investigation, and guess who just shows up? Mr. Armstrong. He had the murder weapon, and he had the consciousness of guilt. After he left the homicide, he threw her phone out, he came home, he hid the clothes, he hid the murder weapon, and then he tried to escape from the interview room.
While the prosecution's opening statement lasted more than 25 minutes, the opening from Armstrong's defense attorney was quite short.
The Constitution in this country makes criminal cases very simple. The state bears the burden of proof. If they don't prove it, beyond a reasonable doubt, you must acquit.
Yeah, that lasted just about 45 seconds.
Throughout the course of this trial, the state will call witnesses, and I will question them after the state goes. At the end of the trial, if Mr. Armstrong chooses to become a witness on his own behalf, then you will hear from him. If the state fails to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt to you, in here, beyond a reasonable doubt, we will ask you to acquit him.
And one of the first witnesses called to the stand by the prosecution was Tasheka's neighbor. And she described what she could hear through her apartment ceiling.
I heard the bedroom door bust open. Then I heard things falling on the floor. Then I heard a young woman above me who was crying and screaming.
She told the jury that she heard, quote, something hard hit the floor above her.
I heard her say, please, no, I love you twice. And then I heard a loud bang.
Tasheka's mother, Olivia, also got on the stand explaining the unusual text that she had gotten from Armstrong, which I mentioned before, and her immediate sense that she needed to check on her daughter.
Did you two have the kind of relationship where he would normally call you or text you?
No.
And what was that text message? What did it say?
The text message said, Mrs. Young, have you heard from Tasheka? If you do, tell her to call me.
So after you got that text, did you think that was unusual, getting a text from the defendant?
Yes.
Did you try and call your daughter?
Yes.
Did she answer?
No.
So what did you decide to do at that point?
I told my husband, I said, Ralph, put on your shoes. Something is wrong. He never called me. My husband put on his shoes, got in the car, and drove to her apartment. The text message said, Mrs. Young, have you heard from Tasheka? If you do, tell her to call me.
So what did you decide to do at that point?
I told my husband, I said, Ralph, put on your shoes. Something is wrong. He never called me.
And what she found next was devastating.
So when you walked into the apartment, what was the first thing you did?
First thing I did was scream her name. I screamed her name again and ran to her room. She was on the floor, and her baby girl was holding her mom's hand.
So detectives, they take Armstrong in for these 2 long interrogations where they consistently caught him in lies. The interrogations were played for the court.
Hey, just take a deep breath real quick. When are you going to realize that everything you're saying is just silly? And it can't be substantiated. It can't be verified.
I'm being
honest. You're not being honest about a damn thing.
You
are not being honest about anything.
The
only honesty that we've said in here,
honest God truth.
The only honesty that we've said in here is don't do this.
No,
I love you.
No, but
don't do this.
No, but
you
listen,
don't have to do this.
I don't know what you're
Daddy
talking about.
hurt mommy.
That's not true.
And you got to get this. At one point, when he's left alone in the interrogation room, Armstrong appears to try to escape. Yeah, he stands up, notices the camera in the corner, and kind of waves his hand in front of it before executing his plan to climb out through the ceiling. Yeah, that didn't work, and officers got in there quickly and got Armstrong back into cuffs. So during testimony, the detective and prosecutor also went over some very concerning text messages between Armstrong and Tasheka, and it highlights just the toxic nature of the relationship in the weeks before her murder.
Hopefully time apart will bring us closer, whatever God has for us.
Yes.
A response message at 3:32 on that same date. We'll see what happens. How would it make you feel if you never saw me again? Question mark.
Yes.
On that same date at 5:54 p.m., never mind, that was my answer, no answer. It appears at 8:37 p.m. that there's a link to Apple Music with an album, Dead to Me, from that same number.
Yes.
At 8:37 p.m., a response from Bursey Armstrong. You've been a dead woman, you'll never be alive.
Yes.
You move as though you never loved me at all. You're supposed to protect me, not hurt me. I have our 3rd child growing inside of me and you treat me like crap. You put everything on social media, I will start to do the same. Looks like our family's over, period. Goodbye. At 10:18 p.m., it looks like that is on the 19th of July.
Yes.
Some of these messages elicited gasps and groans from Tasheka's family in the gallery.
From that same 1886 number, 11:24 p.m., you're not that important. A reply from Mr. Armstrong at 11:24 p.m., you don't even know me, period. You're not important. A reply at 11:25, night, with a kissing emoji. From Mr. Armstrong.
Yes.
From Mr. Armstrong at 11:25 p.m., a has-been from the radio, period. From Mr. Armstrong, you're so lost it's ridiculous, ... People take you for a joke trying to relive your past, period. You have 2 kids, period. Grow up. Sent at 11:28 p.m., no response from the other number.
Now, the defense's strategy seemed to kind of be to let the evidence speak for itself, maybe hope the prosecution's evidence wasn't enough to convince the jury their client was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Armstrong, he chose not to testify, but a lot of the evidence was presented during the trial, including information from Armstrong's phone, Tasheka's blood on clothing found at Armstrong's home, plus the gun buried under the back porch steps. It took the jury just an hour and a half to return a verdict of guilty on July 17th.
State of Florida versus Bursey Armstrong Jr., verdict count 1, with the jury found the defendant guilty of murder in the second degree.
So Armstrong was officially convicted of killing both Tasheka and this unborn baby. And now we move on to sentencing, his sentencing hearing, which was held at the end of August. 2 members of this convicted killer's family opted to give victim impact statements. Armstrong's mother couldn't make it because of an illness, but had a woman who had no connection to the case read the statement for her in court.
You have been found guilty, though I love you. This act is an abomination before man and God. Our family is devastated. I am shattered, for I too love Tasheka. I honor the lives of my grandchildren. Your siblings are inconsolable. Your grandparents, who are almost 90 years old, are gutted.
Armstrong's cousin, Brittany Tompkins, seemed in disbelief that he had ended up here.
You didn't come from this. We weren't raised like this. We was raised in church. You know, we graduated from high school, went off to college, playing ball, good job, good family. You know, we was raising young kids. You know, everybody had issues here and there. You know, that's normal, that's life. But, you know, our family has never experienced anything like this before, ever. One mistake doesn't take away everything, you know what I'm saying? Like.
And then the family members that Tasheka had left behind, they spoke as well, including her aunt.
Tasheka has been missed by her family and friends. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't think of her. Tasheka's life was taken from her too soon. She wasn't able to live a full life because Bursey Armstrong Jr. took her away from us.
Tasheka's mom, who you remember testified during the trial, is now the one caring for Bursey III and Bailey. She told the court her husband, Tasheka's father, died before the trial started, that he couldn't handle what had happened to his baby. Ms. Young also chose to recount again for the judge the brutality of what she saw inside of that apartment.
And when I ran to her bedroom, oh Lord, she was on the floor. Her whole body was as black as your outfit, and she was just as light as you. Everything was covered, and my baby girl barely was holding her mother's bloody hand. She was just holding that hand. They ran and just grabbed me, a handful of blood soaking red and everything. They were just, it was terrible. And I tried to resuscitate my daughter, but you could look at her. She had gotten so big, she had swollen so large. And I called 911 and I was trying to resuscitate. She was gone. She was hard as a rock. She was just hard. And the babies just started crying and bursting. He said, "Mama, Daddy killed Mommy." And I said, "What? Daddy killed Mommy?"
Now, at one point, as Ms. Young was speaking, Armstrong apparently really couldn't hold his tongue anymore and addressed her, something he is not allowed to do.
Through the love and grace of God,
You are full of it.
I am strengthened day by day.
Okay. All right.
I am almost and also thankful to have the love and support of family, my church members, my friends, and my neighbors.
There is no love in you.
Okay, excuse me. We're going to do this in order. I don't want to hear anything from the gallery.
To God be the glory,
There's
but
no
you need
love in you.
God.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mr. Armstrong, we need to be quiet. We do this in order. If you wish to address the court, I will absolutely give you your opportunity, but right now we are hearing from Ms. Young.
Armstrong ended up deciding not to give a formal statement to the court, and the judge imposed the sentence.
This act was an abomination before man and God. You killed the mother of your children. You killed your unborn child. You took these 2 lives in the presence of your other 2 children, who now are left without a mother, and for all intents and purposes, without a father. I am going to sentence you to life in prison with a life minimum mandatory, with credit for the 761 days that you have served, and those two sentences shall run consecutively.
Armstrong was most recently locked up at the Department of Corrections Northwest Florida Reception Center Annex in the Florida Panhandle. He'll be behind bars for the rest of his life. That's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. As always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.